You've definitely heard of T.S. Eliot's The Wasteland, right? It's one of those poems that's a true giant of modern literature, a work that completely changed the game. But let's be honest, it's also famous for being, well, really, really difficult to get through. So today, we're going to try and crack it open. I mean, reading it feels like you're flipping through random channels. It's this jarring mashup of different voices, different languages, and bits of history all thrown together. And that's totally on purpose. Eliot was trying to capture that broken, disillusioned feeling of Europe right after World War I. He wanted you to feel what it was like to live in a world that had been shattered into pieces. For 100 years now, people have been searching for the key to unlock this thing, and they've mostly been looking in Western culture and history. But what if the poem itself is pointing us somewhere else entirely? What if the map to understanding this very modern crisis was actually drawn thousands of years ago in ancient India? Okay, so let's start with the problem that Eliot is laying out. You can think of the poem as a kind of puzzle box that captures this deep spiritual crisis. And it's not just about one moment in history. It's about a feeling of disconnection that I think we can all kind of relate to, even today. This line right here, it's one of the most famous in the whole poem, and it just perfectly nails the entire vibe. The speaker is like desperately trying to build something meaningful out of all the wreckage of culture, religion, and their own life. It's like trying to build a shelter from a hurricane using only broken boards. But here's the really brilliant part about The Wasteland. It's not just a picture of chaos for chaos's sake. Hidden inside all that fragmentation is a kind of logic, a path that actually leads out of the ruin. The poem doesn't just show us the problem, it subtly points us toward a solution, leading all the way to those mysterious final words. And that solution, the key that really unlocks the whole thing, comes from what we call Indian knowledge systems. And get this, Eliot actually studied Sanskrit at Harvard, so he wasn't just sprinkling in some exotic-sounding words to seem smart. No, he was using ancient Indian philosophy as a serious tool to figure things out. Okay, this slide is where it all clicks into place. On one side, you've got the modern Western world that Eliot saw. It feels broken, meaningless, like a machine that's ground to a halt. But on the other side, you have the perspective from Indian philosophy, which says, hey, underneath it all, everything is actually connected. There's a fundamental unity. Eliot is basically using one worldview to diagnose and treat the sickness of the other. So how exactly does this ancient wisdom diagnose a modern illness? Well, Eliot grabs some very specific concepts from Vedantic and Buddhist thought to explain the spiritual emptiness he saw everywhere around him. So the first big idea is a Vedantic term called avijja. It's basically the idea that our suffering comes from a fundamental misunderstanding of how reality works. We see ourselves as separate, isolated little islands in a broken world. But according to this view, that's just an illusion. For Eliot, the modern wasteland is a world that has a massive collective case of avijja. Then you get to this incredibly powerful and haunting part of the poem, where he just repeats the word burning. It's this repetitive, almost hypnotic chant. And this isn't just a random image of fire. It's a direct shout-out to a core teaching of the Buddha. This illustrates the point perfectly. In his fire sermon, the Buddha taught that our lives are constantly on fire with endless desire, with hatred and aversion, and with the ignorance of avidya. And it's this constant burning that traps us in a cycle of suffering, something called samsara. So here's the connection, right? All those spiritually exhausted, kind of numb people in the wasteland, they're all living out the fire sermon. The world is literally burning with desires that never satisfy and a total lack of meaning. It's an ancient diagnosis for a very, very modern spiritual fever. But Eliot doesn't just leave us stranded in the fire. The poem then makes a shift, and it starts to map out a path toward healing. And, you guessed it, just like the diagnosis, the prescription also comes from Indian knowledge systems. Now, our typical Western impulse might be to fix a broken world by getting more stuff, more knowledge, more experiences. But the path offered here is the total opposite. Freedom comes not from adding, but from subtracting. It's about letting go, about discipline, about withdrawing from the ego and all those endless desires that fuel the fire in the first place. And this path is spelled out for us in one of the poem's final super dramatic moments. A voice of thunder speaks 3 Sanskrit words from the ancient Upanishads. Da, give of yourself. Dayadvam, sympathize, break out of your own head and connect with others. And damyata, control, practice the self-restraint you need to quiet your mind. This is it. This is the prescription for healing the wasteland. following this three-step path of giving, sympathizing, and controlling, well, it leads us to the poem's final booming word. And this isn't just an ending, it's the ultimate goal of the entire spiritual journey we've been on. Shanti. It's a Sanskrit word that means peace. But we're not just talking about the absence of noise or conflict. It's way deeper than that. It's a profound state of inner stillness and unity that goes beyond the chaos and suffering of the everyday world. It is, as they say, the peace which passeth understanding, a feeling you can't just think your way into. And that is why Eliot ends his epic poem by repeating this word 3 times, Shanti, Shanti, Shanti. He's not just adding a cool-sounding foreign word. He's ending with a formal blessing, a powerful final resolution. This is the answer to the burning. It's the silence, the unity, and the profound peace that you can find even amongst the fragments of our ruins. So when you look at it this way, The Wasteland becomes so much more than just a difficult poem. It's a kind of map, a guide that leads us from feeling broken to feeling whole. And it leaves us with a really important question for our own lives. In an age of constant noise and distraction, how can we learn to listen for that voice of the thunder and find our own Shanti?